Allen's attorneys claim police ignored crime scene evidence that the teens were killed in a ritualistic sacrifice after consulting a Purdue professor who told them there was no evidence to support that. In court documents filed today, Allen's attorneys say in a recent interview that same professor contradicted what investigators told the defense just last month. According to the defense, the professor told investigators, quote, after viewing the pattern of sticks on the girls, that it was a given that someone was trying to replicate a Germanic rune script, possibly associated with Odinism. That analysis, say Allen's lawyers, was backed up by a Harvard expert. Allen's attorneys claim investigators knew the Purdue professor's name, but tried to hide it from their defense team, and also misled the Carroll County prosecutor by telling him they didn't know the professor's name or where to find him. All of it proof the defense claims that investigators misled a judge to get a search warrant for Richard Allen's home.
This is the defendant's additional Frank's notice that was filed by Richard Allen and his attorneys on October 3rd, 23. Comes now the accused, Richard Allen, by and through counsel Andrew Baldwin and Brad Rosie, and files the following additional information to supplement the Frank's motion and memorandum previously filed with this court on September 18th, 2023. In support of said motion, the defense states the following. 1. That on September 18th, 23, the defense filed its motion for Frank's hearing as well as a memorandum in support of said motion. 2. Since filing that motion, the defense has received new discovery that strongly supports the defense's belief that Tony Liggett and Unified Command attempted to conceal from Judge Diener and has since even attempted to hide from the defense that evidence supports that those practicing Odinism were the murderers of Abby and Libby. 3. Specifically, Tony Liggett swore under oath at his August 8th, 23 deposition that a Purdue professor did not believe that the sticks found on Abby's and Libby's bodies consisted of, quote, runes, end quote. Liggett deposition, pages 74 to 77. 4. Furthermore, Sergeant Jerry Holeman swore under oath at his August 10th, 23 deposition that a Purdue professor said that the sticks found on the girls did not represent, quote, Odinism or any type of cult worshiping or any type of a group that would have conducted the crime, end quote. Holeman deposition, page 63, lines 10 to 20. 5. Because of the findings of this Purdue professor, the Unified Command claimed to have essentially abandoned the Odinism aspect of the investigation into the murders of Abby and Libby. 6. In response to the defense request to depose this Purdue professor on September 6, 23, the prosecutor Nick McClelland told the defense via email, quote, as stated before, we are trying to identify the Purdue professor, but no luck yet. Detective Holeman has reached out to the FBI and Purdue and has not gotten a response yet. We will continue our endeavors, but may not be able to identify him/her, end quote. 7. However, on September 19th, 2023, the day after the Frank's memorandum was filed, where it was revealed that the Purdue professor was, quote, missing, end quote, miraculously, Jerry Holeman found the professor, whose name is Jeffrey Turco, and interviewed him. 8. However, in the interview, Jerry Holeman apologized to Turco for the 3 to 4 weeks that it took him, Holeman, to sit down and talk with Turco. 9. This means that Holeman was aware of the Purdue professor's identity since mid to late August, but nonetheless told Nick McClelland that Unified Command could not locate the Purdue professor, and furthermore, that they may not ever be able to find the Purdue professor. 10. However, after it was obvious that the Purdue professor would probably, quote, out, end quote, himself as the missing Purdue professor following the Frank's memorandum, Holeman went and interviewed the Purdue professor the day after the Frank's memorandum was filed. 11. Why would Holeman and the Unified Command try to hide the name of the Purdue professor, even risking ridicule for the absurdity that they could not remember his name? The answer is obvious once the taped statement was played. Dr. Turco stated that after viewing the pattern of the sticks on the girls that, quote, it was a given, end quote, that someone was trying to replicate a Germanic runic script. Furthermore, Dr. Turco consulted with a colleague from Harvard who had even more knowledge on runes, and this Harvard professor was in agreement with Turco. Furthermore, Dr. Turco stated that Odinism is an extreme neo-pagan / neo-heathenism ideology that has right-wing racist connotations. Furthermore, Dr. Turco stated that according to 19th century sources, that Vikings practiced ritualistic killings and sacrifices. Furthermore, Dr. Turco stated that although he could not necessarily interpret these runes, that the stick configurations were pretty clearly runic, and that he, quote, could certainly imagine that this was somebody's idea that when you do human sacrifice, you carve runes. There are some poetic sources that would sort of support that idea that somebody might have come across. That scenario seems entirely plausible to me, end quote. Turco taped statement 15 to 1550. Furthermore, Dr. Turco discussed how runes were thought to have, quote, magical significance and would be used in incantations, in rituals, and that there is a sacrificial connection in mythological poetry. These were things, again, where somebody who was sort of an Odin, quote, fanboy, end quote, would likely come across, end quote. 12, that on September 18th, September 21st, and September 27th, 2023, the state of Indiana made available to the defense a total of 14 hard drives, 5 flash drives, 3 disks, and what appeared to be hundreds of pages of paperwork. 13. Particularly contained in the state of Indiana's September 27, 2023 evidence drop was a thumb drive that contained an interview of a, quote, Jeffrey Turco, end quote. This was not marked as a Purdue professor. 14. It seems apparent by the timing of events that Tony Liggett and Unified Command knew the Purdue professor's name and wanted to hide his name and his findings from the defense, as Turco's conclusions supported the defense and opposed the prosecution and Liggett and Holeman's sworn statements. Therefore, apparently in what seems like a complete harebrained scheme, Holeman and Liggett decided to claim that they did not know the professor's name, hoping that this would put an end to the defense looking into the Purdue professor. However, once the memorandum made it clear that the Purdue professor would certainly be found at some point in time, it took Holeman one day to locate Dr. Turco and interview him about his findings of 2017. 15. Again, Franks requires a preliminary finding that law enforcement has acted intentionally or with reckless disregard for the truth when being accused of concealing evidence from the judge who signed the warrant. It would be difficult to find a more outrageous set of facts to support that Liggett and the Unified Command intentionally concealed the Odinite information from Judge Diener. If Liggett and Unified Command were willing to try to get away with concealing a Purdue professor from defense counsel, then it is easy to see that they would have no problem concealing all the evidence detailed in the Franks memorandum from Judge Diener as well. Wherefore, defense counsel respectfully files his additional Franks notice and would request that this court factor in this new filing into its ruling on the defense's request for a Franks hearing.
Today, McClellan calling the entire memo, quote, colorful, dramatic, and highly unprofessional, defending Sheriff Liggett, saying, quote, he did not intentionally or recklessly omit evidence or lie about evidence to get the warrant, going on to say the accusations are not supported by any evidence. However, defense attorney John Tompkins says the lawyers wouldn't make those accusations lightly.
No lawyer would sign his name making these accusations unless they felt they were well documented and they could back them up when they get in court and present them to the judge.
Now a judge must consider more than 150 pages of court documents and decide if the information in them, including the theory the girls were killed as part of a ritual sacrifice, supports that request.
It's this judge's responsibility to say, is the omitted information egregious enough, significant enough, relevant enough that it is likely that it would have changed that judicial officer's decision. And that's a high burden for the defense to make.
One of two things happened. That was a chance encounter. That's possible. Don't think it's likely, but it's possible. Or that person knew that they were going to be there. That's possible as well. Those are things that we're looking into. Question over here. Keep in mind that the likeliness, the possibility of more than one person. We're not saying that the voice that you heard is the same as this person here. This is all very complicated, very involved, and as much as we would like to tell you everything, more importantly, we want to solve the crime.
I also wanted to see if the sheriff would agree that he felt there were so-called signatures left by the perpetrator at the crime scene. The former prosecutor of the case, Robert Ives, told us they existed.
He told us that, in his opinion, there are 2 or 3 signatures left by the killer at the crime scene. Mm-hmm. And you said you agree in part with that?
Mm-hmm. A crime scene will tell you a story. Just stand back and observe, watch, see what it's going to tell you. That's why evidence is important. Once you put all those pieces of evidence together like a huge puzzle, it can tell you that story. And so, yes, I agree with what Prosecutor Ives said, that there's things that existed there at that crime scene that when the day comes, put them all back together and here's the story it's going to tell.